Metadata quality is something I'm really excited about. It's a whole new dimension that we've never really had before in org management. And I'm Bill Appleton. I'm the CTO here at Metazoa, and I do a lot of the engineering on our Snapshot product, which is for org management, org maintenance, org health, org agility, all the stuff you need to keep your org running correctly. And the solutions that we offer historically have been down this left-hand column. I call it the big three. It's discover and remove technical debt, optimize security with profiles and permissions, and generate documentation for compliance and visualization and corporate governance. And AI hasn't changed our mission, but it's really expanded what we can do. And so, before we could tell you that an email template was not being used. Now we can tell you that it's poorly written, that the merge fields have errors, that it violates your corporate style guide. We have a whole bunch of new information that we can provide that lets you make better decisions about your org. Look at security and permissions. How has that changed? Well, imagine that you're starting up a new org with 1,000 custom objects, 500 profiles, 500 fields per object. That's 250 million field permissions. And if you looked at one for every second, it would take you 37 years to look at them all. And so this is the type of problem that admins face. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, and it's a very important needle because if somebody has the wrong permission, then all kinds of other bad things can happen. So later this year, we'll be coming out with a way to categorize all of your permissions by user persona. But this is the type of thing that we're throwing AI at. Lastly, looking at compliance and documentation, companies write all of these policies, and the policies can be because of government regulations, internal things that they want to accomplish, all kinds of different reasons. And historically, a lot of these policies are just ignored. And one of the reasons for that is they're difficult to audit, they're difficult to enforce. And, let's say you have GDPR come up as a policy. How do you look at your Salesforce org and figure out if you're GDPR compliant or not? So this is the type of thing that we can now do. You can take a corporate policy and apply it to an org. So let's just dive into technical debt for a second. So we used to be that we could tell you that assets aren't being used, haven't been used in a long time, assets are not being referenced, assets that nobody has permission to use, assets that are inactive, hidden, disabled. These are all kind of quantitative things where like 5 assets are being used, 10 assets are not being used. There's your technical debt. But now with metadata quality, we can look at a whole range of other intangible factors, things like reusability and extensibility and scalability and accessibility, and all of these different qualitative factors that are very, very important. But you can't just get at them by looking at the data. But by using AI, we can come up with quantified information about all of these important other types of factors. So I just graphed here technical debt versus metadata quality, just to kind of look at some of the differences. And so asset usage is on the vertical axis and quality is on the horizontal axis. And now most of the high value strategic assets in your Salesforce org are going to be in that upper right quadrant. So that's where, it's your bread and butter. That's the core value of your Salesforce org. And of course, there's also assets in the lower left that are not being used and are low quality. They probably should be deprecated. But what happens when you've got an asset that's heavily used but is bad quality? So for example, let's say you have an Apex class that fires hundreds of times a day, but it's got a security flaw. So that's really something different that wouldn't be picked up on by a technical debt test. And so that's where you'd want to move that to the right to make it a high value asset by fixing the problems in the class in this case. And by the same token, you might have assets that aren't being used but are very high quality. And then you're missing out on something that could be really great. And so in that case, you want to increase the usage through adoption, maybe changing the permissions on that asset. So it just shows you that metadata quality brings this new dimension to org management, which I think is really important. So all of the stuff that we've been working on really circles around prompt automation. And it's this concept we've pioneered where you can use AI to perfect a particular metadata asset and try it, get your prompt exactly right, test it with a few more assets, and then apply that prompt to all of the assets of that type. And so a lot of what we've been doing is the mechanics of, how to range through all of your assets, how to apply AI to them, how to help people write the prompts if they do need to make any changes to the prompt, and then how to actually deploy those changes back into Salesforce. So there's, a lot of nuts and bolts, but the basic idea is the applicability of AI to individual metadata assets. So when I first got started using AI, I thought that, if I use AI to generate a prompt for AI, that might not work. There would be some reason why that wouldn't work. That turns out to be completely wrong. The best way to generate prompts in many circumstances is with AI. And the reason is because you have enormous control on what you're generating, and you can generate thousands of them if necessary. And so I guess the moral of the story is that the only thing better than AI is gigantic boatloads of AI. And really that's the situation. You're bringing this very powerful tool in at scale on an entire org. And so, but you have to be mindful though of the order in which you bootstrap things. And so looking at org transformation, at the very bottom, you really have policy and process. So this is, what are your corporate policies? What are your business use cases, and all of that information. And very unfortunately, Salesforce doesn't have a standard place to store that information. But in Snapshot, we have a feature called Metadata Notes where you can store that information, and then that information is automatically brought into any relevant prompt about that asset. So the metadata notes will follow the asset all throughout our interface and then be used by AI in the appropriate places. And once you have your policy and process in place, you can start to work on descriptions. There's 160 metadata types that have descriptions in Salesforce. And they're really, really important, especially now, because Agentforce and other systems are going to use those descriptions to understand what those assets do. But given your policy and process, given background information about metadata types, you can generate absolutely beautiful descriptions automatically. And we're doing that. Our new description enrichment report has been out for a couple of months and is really great at building descriptions. So going north of descriptions, there's security classifications, compliance groups, data sensitivity level, what I call classifications. It's kind of additional information about things that are encrypted, things that are sensitive data that Salesforce is paying attention to, and other agents in Salesforce will be paying attention to. And so given your policy and process, your descriptions and your classifications, you can start to rebuild content. And that's really what we're going to show you with metadata quality, how to analyze content for problems, and then how to actually remediate the problems as well. And then lastly, kind of the top of the pyramid is going to be code. I mean, you've got Apex, you've got HTML, you've got JavaScript, and AI loves that stuff and can totally transform an org, but you really need the context there ahead of time with, the rest of the pyramid there down below. So things that are good to transform with AI: custom objects, formula fields, validation rules, and all the classifications are great. Things with complex structure, flows, flexi pages, so on and so forth, great. Things with code, Apex, HTML, JavaScript, going down that list, great. And things that just have text, like email templates or descriptions or help text, these are all rich targets for AI. And AI needs some complexity to work with to be able to really generate something useful. So just talking for a second about the the new models that we're using, we have some of the reasoning models and some of the intelligence models. The reasoning are for breaking down complex problems into smaller steps, multi-step reasoning. The intelligence models are really the natural language GPT type models that you're probably used to. So you can try the reasoning models on code problems and the intelligence models on kind of anything else, anything with language. And currently, Snapshot has GPT 4.1, which you can see is fast and low price. Today, I'm going to be using GPT 4.1. I mean, 4.1 mini is our default model, and 4.1 is a really high intelligence model for all kinds of other purposes. Just a word about our roadmap, without getting into too much inside baseball. Uh, if you see in the upper left, the AI infrastructure reports are uh, really, really key. They're embedded in Snapshot hundreds of places. So, for example, if you get an error in a deployment, you can explain the error message, and we'll show you the error, the line it occurred on, the rest of the asset for context, general purpose dictionary information on that type of asset and its common deployment problems, and then also your metadata notes for any business process that is affecting that asset. And it brings it all together. And then it'll not only tell you how to fix what the error is all about, it'll tell you how to fix the error. It's just really amazing to see how well this works. And same deal with explaining assets and explaining complex reports. So that has been kind of a lot of efforts gone into that part of the product. We built a prompt engineering platform called Metadata Studio. In many ways, it is being replaced by prompt automation. So basically, we learned all of these cool tricks in Metadata Studio that you could do as a prompt engineer. And now we're trying to make these things so much simpler to use with kind of point and click prompt automation. And so that's probably the appropriate thing for us to be doing. And then lastly, our intelligent search, intelligent assistant product has a really bright future with model context protocol. We'll be coming out with an MCP extension to Snapshot that lets you use your information about your org in the context of ChatGPT, in the context of the desktop application from OpenAI, and then also to combine that with all the other information you have about your other enterprise systems. So I think that's really going to be a game changer. We're not quite there yet. All right, that's my presentation. I'm going to do a demo, especially of our metadata quality report. Can everyone still see my screen? Are we still live here, Ryan?
Yep. Still
Okay.
good.
All right, so this is a Snapshot desktop. This one's really complex. Yours doesn't need to be this complex. I've got production and user acceptance and sandboxes and developer projects and all kinds of stuff here. What you do, the basic idea for those of you who don't know, is you take a snapshot, and then after you take a snapshot, you can see the documentation reports, optimization and cleanup, security and permissions. That's the big three. Those are the big three that we really are our core features. And if you go to the arrows, then you can do things like deploy metadata and migrate data sets. So this is a typical desktop, and the new report here is under documentation, metadata quality. And this report's a little different than our other reports because you have to generate the quality results, and that requires AI, which takes some time, takes some money. And although it doesn't take a lot of time or a lot of money, but we've made it so that you can generate and evaluate the quality of things you're interested in. So, for example, let's look at my email templates, and I can select a particular template and evaluate the quality issues. And when I do that, you can see here are all the different quality issues that I think are going to be important for an email template. Spelling, broken merge fields, tone, clarity, HTML structure, voice, inconsistency, on and on and on. And you can see that, for example, it even covers things like invalid encodings, or legacy encodings. So, and then if you read farther down, you'll see how to colorize this, how to categorize this, how to fix this and what this is. And so that's really what's in the prompt. And so you don't need to edit the prompts, but you can if you need to. And so what we can do here is just click the submit button. And if you're brave enough to do a live webinar, it shows you a heat map. Here's my issues, quality issues, down the left-hand side. Here's the categories and the explanation of each issue. And you can see they're color-coded to be red, yellow, or green. And so really in just a one view, it gives you a picture of all of these quality issues and how they affect that particular email template. And what's one thing that's really awesome is the category. So the category it does not have to be uh, the same as the color. You don't have to have, you can have as many categories as you want, but the ability just to, for example, you could categorize these templates as their support, their marketing, their sales, their personal, and then all of those categories would be tagged with the email. So it's really, really useful. And then you come back to the main screen and you can see all of that information is now included in the email template. And so now the other thing you can do is you can select any number of additional templates and evaluate multiple issues. And so this is really key for prompt automation so that you can select hundreds and hundreds of assets and evaluate them all and get a gigantic heat map of all of the asset quality in your org. So one question that I had before was, how is the metadata quality different from code quality that uses PMD? And so PMD is a lovely thing. It's static code analysis, and we have a great implementation of it, but PMD only works on Apex classes. PMD doesn't let you easily edit the different quality issues that it's concerned with, and PMD darn sure can't fix the problems. So, PMD is great, but I really think we've got something different here. And what you can do here is, now that you've evaluated the quality of multiple assets, you can start to see how all of that shapes out. And so that's just email templates. So there's a lot of other richness here. For example, Lightning Web Components. So Lightning Web Components are one of those things that I struggle with. They're kind of UI widgets in HTML and JavaScript. There's a lot of knowledge that you need to really work with Lightning Web Components and make them really useful and especially to understand them. But this does an amazing job of looking for documentation, um, reusability. It's finding problems in the error handlers. It's finding master label issues. It just goes soup to nuts and finds every issue with this Lightning Web Component. And now you can turn directly around and say remediate. And so what remediate will do is look at the problems that we've discovered and apply the solution using some pretty clever implementation of AI. And I'll show you what that looks like here.
I have a question that came through while this is running.
Yeah.
There was a slide about cost. Does it cost extra on top of the Snapshot license to run this?
Yes, we will get to that, but the short answer is we give you a couple hundred free uses of AI, and then eventually, if you're a power user, you're transforming entire orgs, please, yes, get your own license from OpenAI. You'll be shocked at how inexpensive it is. So we've
Okay.
just remediated all of those problems in this Lightning Web Component, which is pretty darn amazing, actually. So now we can turn around, and as soon as you start changing problems, you'll see the deploy button show up here at the bottom. And so that's how you can actually deploy this. Let's fix one of the problems here with our email template too. So yeah, we currently support OpenAI and the Microsoft Azure flavor of OpenAI, and you can get your developer key and paste it into the preferences menu, and then boom, you're using your own implementation of OpenAI. And some of our enterprise customers want to do that anyway. It's kind of a requirement. So, so here we go. We've just fixed the problems in this email template. And then what we can do is we can now go into the deploy button And you'll see here's my Lightning Web Component I fixed. Here's my email template. And let's take a look at my email template here. So if you look at the meta XML, you see what it's done. It's fixed the encoding key to be more modern. It's also re-encoded the text only element here and added that to the template. And then meanwhile, the main body of the template, it's made all kinds of CSS and other changes based on my corporate policies. And so now you just go to the deploy metadata tab and you can deploy those changes in the current org. So pretty darn amazing in terms of the ability to transform an org and turn it into something new. So let me show you now an org that I've done a lot more work on. I've analyzed the quality of a lot more assets, and it's right here. So here's my Apex classes. You can see really a bird's eye view with the categories there. And you can also go into heat map mode, which really just shows all this information about my classes. And of course, you can export that into any format. So say you want a PDF of that. Then let me try to find it. Then here it is. Here's kind of in one heat map all this information about Apex quality. And of course, you can zoom into that any ways that you need to. So super, super useful for understanding where the problems are, where's the good stuff, and how to make changes in your org. Same thing with Apex triggers. And let's look at our email templates. And then it might be easier to get a quicker view to take off the heat maps, and you can actually see all the issues. The issues are on the column, and the individual email templates are here on the row. And you can even do flows. So, it's amazing. We can look at all the key issues behind flow problems, and they're documented here at top. Non-standard variables, unclear element names, no output variables, missing fault paths, incomplete or linear flow path, no decisions and loops. And so this is just a great way to analyze your flows and to improve some of the problems there. And again, we looked at Lightning Web Components and then some of the other available types. We'll be adding new types to this list as time goes on. We've got about 25 now. If you go to the Display Report tab, you can get a giant roll-up report of every quality issue that you care about in your org. And it'll put them all together. You can also move them into heat map mode and get an absolutely amazing report. We have dashboards. So, for example, this shows the extent to which we've looked at the quality issues versus in red what we have left to go look at if we want to try to do them all. Maybe there's just some that are more important. And this is kind of an amazing graph. It's a bird's eye view of the quality of your org, with lots of opportunities there for cleanup and so on and so forth. So one thing I wanted to cover was this is a live Salesforce org. And so it could be a production org, it could be a sandbox, it could be anything you want. But one of the best ways to run this report is not on a production org, but rather on a developer project. And so this is a developer project. I can find it right here on my local folder. It's a Salesforce DX project. And so you can use this right alongside Visual Studio Code on your same computer. And you'll see you can launch the command line or open the project right from here. But what's great about this is if you change the metadata quality here, the same report works perfectly on a developer project. So you can save all of these metadata changes that you're making and analyze them and use that project for deployment later. So that's a really key capability, is to make this so that you can bring metadata quality improvements into the release management process and really improve the org, alongside your team and the other people that you're working with. All right, great. That is my demo. Are there any questions?
All right, we do have a question that came through. How to do regression testing for the metadata transformation? Does the tool generate regression test scenarios?
Uh, yes. When you Let me find a good example of it. When you take a snapshot of an org, we don't throw the old snapshots away. And so in the case of that developer project, you would have the old project and then the new project, and you'd be able to run metadata differences on that. You'd be able to look at changes over time. You'd be able to look at differences between production and the project. So for example, just to do that, you can manage time series from here and compare the time series. There's our I need better test data here, but you can compare the time series, and then also you can go to any of the arrows and look at your metadata differences. So for example, looking at the differences in these orgs, you can see everything that's been changed, added, deleted. So just by virtue of using Snapshot, you keep this ability to look at how things changed over time in between orgs.
Great. And then another one, does it download all the metadata onto the laptop? And does it also download the data for field usage?
A good question. So the snapshot is all metadata that is downloaded to a sandbox that we have on your laptop. And for those who may not know this, a snapshot is a zero trust environment. It is a desktop application that communicates from your personal computer to your Salesforce orgs over your network with your hardware and your virtual machines. So there's no way, we don't have a cloud, we don't have a database, and that's absolutely the right architecture for something like this that needs to be secure, used in healthcare, used in financial, used in government. But uh, so the way it works is that the metadata definitely is brought down to the local machine. In terms of field usage, that particular report runs a query on usage on the different fields, and then that information is lost. It vanishes. It goes into the report, and then that's how the report is constructed, and then there's nothing stored. No data stored after that.
Okay. And is this available now? And can I access it with my Snapshot license?
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Just go to the documentation tab, and it's metadata quality. So I should point out the other description enrichment is here as well, which is also really useful. Description enrichment is better at doing descriptions than metadata quality for some technical reasons. For one thing, every description has a different size, so that's an issue. And then under optimization, we have the other two prompt automation tools for Apex code quality and Apex code coverage. So Apex code quality will remediate PMD errors for people who care about PMD, and Apex code coverage will calculate better test coverage with the context of all the classes that are covered under the test. So it's a very effective way to improve test coverage.
Great. And then a couple um, more privacy security questions. Can you talk a bit more about the privacy implications of using AI in Metazoa? How are you protecting my company data when you send out my info to ChatGPT?
Yeah, great question. Here in the preferences, I think this is a good thing to look at. For example, this is where you pick your model. This is AI usage. So first things first, if for some reason your security group doesn't, on your journey to AI doesn't approve it yet, you can turn it off. And the whole product works fine. There's some icing on the cake that's missing here and there, but it works fine without OpenAI. And then we have our free key, which has a couple hundred uses. Eventually, you'll get a polite message asking you to get your own key. Um, but plenty of usage for you to get started, and all the explain stuff is always free. And then you can have your own key for OpenAI or the Azure developer key, and that'll put your corporate key there. So in their terms of use, OpenAI makes it very clear they do not train on API usage. They do train on like ChatGPT. If you just start using ChatGPT, there is some training involved and they're remembering what you're doing. But they make it very clear that they don't do that for the enterprise API access to OpenAI. And I believe them because if they did remember details like email addresses and so forth, it would really come back to haunt them very quickly. And so I think it's true. But all that having been said, you need to make your own decisions about whether you're ready to and to what extent you're ready to use AI.
Great. Another one, I need to create Google Slides based on the results. Do you offer direct integrations from Metazoa, or do I need to export to CSV and script it from there?
No, we do not create. We support PDF, HTML, CSV, and native Excel documents on the output. So we don't make Google Slides at present.
Hey. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. Can we use non-ChatGPT AI services instead of ChatGPT?
So at present, we use OpenAI and the Microsoft Azure version of OpenAI. And I guess, the other ones out there are things like Claude, and we might support those. So far, we haven't had a lot of call for it. So far, OpenAI seems to be working fine. Mhm. Any other questions?
Let's see. Um, no, I think that's it. Oh, here's one. When you fix the problems in the metadata, how do you get that saved back into the org?
So it kind of whizzes by a little quickly, but if you saw where we were um, here and we remediated some problems, it showed up that little deploy button right here, and that takes you into the deployment tools, and then you can deploy the changes right from there. Or in the other case that I was showing that I like a lot actually, set up a developer project as Salesforce DX or whatever format you want it in, and make all the changes there. Populate the project with your classes or whatever assets you want to make changes to. Make your changes there, deploy them there, and then it literally saves all of those changes, here in your local project folder. There's where your Lightning Web Components will be. And it's cool because you can come in and edit these web components if you need to. If you want to review them, if you want to edit them, you can open them with Visual Studio Code, whatever you want to do. And then you can take a snapshot and deploy them. And then these arrows will push any from Git to developer projects to Salesforce DX to a real Salesforce org to a Scratch org. You can move anything to any direction.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Don't think I've seen any. Wait, let's see. There is one more. How can I control access to the AI features? If I add my key, will all users within my organization be able to use the same OpenAI key, or do I need to share the key with each user individually?
You do need to, at present, you need to share the key. It's just kind of a security thing. It only works locally for your key on your computer. Anything else?
Okay. I think that was it for any last questions? You can pop them in the Q&A. Can I add a Git repository as a snap? Also, is there a way to work DevOps in
So
this?
this is not a DevOps product, basically. So if you have a bunch of developers writing code and you need Git to merge the code and create the promotion branches and all of that, go get Capado or something. Capado is a great partner. This is all about release management and org transformation. Org splits, clones, and merges is really our strong point. But we do work with Git repos very, very nicely. You can set up a developer project to also be a repo, and then you can pull all those assets down to the project, remediate remediate metadata quality issues, and push it back to the repo if you want to. Anything else?
Right. I think that was it for the questions. Thanks everyone for great questions. Thank you, Bill, for this demo. I think this is going to be a really incredible new feature for Snapshot. So we're really excited to have this available for everyone. Just go in. I think all you have to do is close out and reopen Snapshot, and you should get the newest report. So, test it out and let us know how it goes, and reach out if you need any help or training support. We'll be here for you. Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.